Well, hello, and I want to welcome everybody today to a panel discussion on native seed from a landowner's perspective. This is part of the native seed stakeholder meetings that we generally host here at UNI, but that have gone online for this year for the obvious reasons. So we're very happy to have you with us today online. I know that kind of opens things up to a broader geographic region and lots more people can participate. So we're happy to have you here with us in Iowa for the moment. Just want to introduce to you a little bit the setting where I find myself and the host organization. Here today is the Tallgrass Prairie Center at the University of Northern Iowa. Our mission is to empower people to value and restore resilient, diverse tallgrass prairie. We do that through 4 key programs: Iowa Roadside Management, our research and restoration program, Prairie on Farms, and then also the program that I work with. My name is Laura Walter, by the way, and I manage the plant materials program here at the Tallgrass Prairie Center. We have fields here on site where we grow out seed that has its genetic origins in Iowa remnant prairies. And we want to make sure that there's an available supply of affordable, genetically diverse, and regionally appropriate native seed for large-scale prairie restoration. And that means restorations on roadsides across the state, as well as on private land. One of the things that we've learned as we've engaged in this work is that even though we see kind of a small part of this native seed system, from the remnant seed collections to then eventually the big piles of yellow tagged seed that show up for our roadside program, we're only seeing a small part of that native seed system, the broader system that supplies native seed for all needs. And so I'm not going to ask anybody to memorize this diagram today. But I just want you to see that we are a part of a complex supply chain that ends up getting native seed in the hands of the people who need it for restoration on both public and private lands. There can sometimes be some stressors on this system, and those, when those things happen, they bring to light some of the relationships that exist in this system. And that has led us at the Tallgrass Prairie Center to initiate some meetings among native seed stakeholders so that we can better understand how we affect each other and how our decisions within the system affect other parts of the system. So one of the parts of the system we haven't really addressed in our other meetings is the one that I've highlighted in kind of a bluish green, which is the private landowners, who are a major player in this system. They purchase a lot of the native seed that gets applied to land, especially in Iowa, where almost all of our land is privately held. So we wanted to have a meeting where we would ask some landowners to share their perspectives on conservation that uses native seed and what that experience has been like for them and how we can help to improve that experience going forward. Want to thank, first off, the funders of the Plant Materials Program are the Living Roadway Trust Fund at the Iowa Department of Transportation and the University of Iowa. And want to highlight a couple of key collaborators who are the Xerces Society for Invertebrate Conservation and Green Iowa AmeriCorps. We've also had, we have a couple of panelists who are from some other collaborating organizations, the Iowa DNR and Pheasants Forever, but we'll get to those introductions in just a little bit. So my co-hosts today are Sarah Nizzi from the Xerces Society. She's an NRCS partner biologist and Farmville pollinator conservation planner, which is quite a mouthful. So just in introducing Sarah, you've already done quite a bit. But Sarah has helped to plan this, this meeting from the get-go, from inviting people to participate in the panel and helping to define the topics and questions and ideas that we're going to address. So Sarah, do you have any words that you would like to say before we move on?
I don't think so. I mean, for those that may not know me, I cover the whole state and work very closely with NRCS, and I'm just very excited about this event, and I really appreciate everyone who's been able to join us live today.
Great. Also, Sarah will be monitoring the chat. So one of the things, the logistical things I need to tell you is that if you're a participant or an attendee You won't have your microphone on. We've disabled that, but you are able to type your questions into the chat. And there are going to be a couple of pauses in the question and answer period with the panel where we will invite some of those questions to be heard and answered. We also have helping out today Ann Phillips, who's the Community Engagement Coordinator for the Tallgrass Prairie Center. She's helped to organize the meeting and is providing logistical support, as is Andy Olson. He's a Green Iowa AmeriCorps member serving with us as a communications associate, and he can help you with technical assistance questions and will also be helping to run the meeting today. So those are the people working on this with us. I'd like to introduce our panelists for today. We have both landowners and conservation planners who are here to talk about that process of planning and planting native seed and how that turns out. And first off, I'll go ahead and just list everybody, and then I'll give each of you a chance to go into an introduction. I did make it an option to include slides, so some people have some pictures to share as well. So we'll just go down the list. Ruth Rabinowitz is one of our landowners, and she's the owner of Oxbow Farms. And I'll go through everybody's names, and then I'll turn it over to you, Ruth, to go ahead and introduce your pictures. Maggie McQuown and Steve Turman own Resilient Farms. Dave Schmidt owns Troublesome Creek Cattle. Allie Rath is one of our conservation planners. She's with Pheasants Forever and is a senior farm bill biologist. And Kevin Anderson is also a conservation planner. He's a DNR private lands biologist. And so thank you to all of our panelists who agree to spend this afternoon with us. As we've gone into conversations with each other, what's become clear is that we have a lot to talk about. So I'm going to try to keep the introductions my end short so that our panelists can speak. If it so happens that we go over time, if anybody needs to leave right at 2:30, you're welcome. We won't hold it against you, but we'll probably stay on and keep the conversation going for maybe up to about 30 minutes after the time that we were planning to end. This conversation will be recorded, or is being recorded, I hope, at this point. Then we'll share that recording with all of the registrants. And then once we have some post-processing done here at UNI, we'll share that more broadly through our website and other channels. So I think we are ready for Ruth. Take it away, please.
Hi, everybody. So we're just going to go into the slides. Yeah, I just moved to Iowa, built a house, designed a house, retired some crop ground, and I have been hoofing it and walking farms with ticks and insects and sweat and humidity. And this is one of the pictures I just took of kind of a drowned out area of crop. It needs to be put in conservation. So as I'm going along, I'm thinking, oh, this really needs to be a CRP buffer, or something needs to happen over here, and making some notes. That's what that picture is there. Another one. I knew about this one. This one was, it's in Clark County. It's right by the side of the road. It would be an excellent, sort of duck habitat or something that wants the water. And so I want to take that out of there. My tenant is paying rent to grow corn there. And clearly it's year after year being drowned out by this determined wetland. I cannot put any tile in there. So that needs to be troubleshooted and dealt with. I went up to South Dakota. I have one farm in Roberts County and met with both the Climate Land Leaders group that I'm a part of, and this is NRCS, and also Ducks Unlimited. So I had 3 groups there. There were like 10 of us that day on this farm. And this farm has never had that much attention. So we were like digging up roots, looking at the aggregates. I actually had a lot of earthworms in there. It's been no-till. The farm had been in CRP for about 2 decades. So it's now in corn and doing quite well this year. That's me and some of the team and my sidekick, Lucy, the dog. So, I forget which farm this is, but it is a pollinator CRP installation, and I just feel incredibly happy to be able to walk these lands and see the amount of dragonflies, the variety of butterflies I'm seeing, the amount of birds that are there. Totally different than when it was brome or when it was crop up against these trees. You froze in there.
Uh-oh. I think we may have
Again,
another.
Yeah. Okay. There we are. So I've learned I have golden oyster mushrooms, and I've eaten those for the first time. And I have these little forests of maybe 5 acres, and I never even walked in them. And so I've been cutting barbed wire and entering these places. And I actually have a number of ponds on these farms, and I've never been in a kayak on the farms. And so I did that recently, really just using walking sticks, a backpack with water, bug spray, hats, food, and physically just getting out there. Typically I would be in a truck or some kind of off-road vehicle, but there's a lot of sweat equity that goes into actually walking your property, and you see a lot more. And so I've been taking a lot of pictures, and now even today was doing drone flying with a friend that has a very good drone, and really checking everything on these farms from the air as well.
Yeah, thanks so much, Ruth, for your eyes on the land and for sharing the images with us so we could imagine all the things you're seeing. And your beautiful sunsets. Dave, I think
So many beautiful sunsets.
So many beautiful sunsets. I'm going to go ahead and cue Dave up here because you shared this picture with me and wanted to let you describe what's going on in here and a little bit about your farming operation and how you incorporate conservation.
Sure. Yeah, my name is Dave Schmidt, and I actually grew up just south of UNI in Cedar Falls, but now my wife and I and our 2 kids live in Western Iowa in Audubon County near Exira, south of Audubon. And my involvement with Prairie is kind of in two different areas. So there's my in-laws have CRP that's just adjacent to the land that we have. And this picture is from 2017. That's our daughter a few years ago. And that was Prairie, that was CRP that was just established in 2015. So they got off to a great start, and it still looks good today. Part of my interest is in keeping this as Prairie after the CRP contract is up. Then the other aspect of my interest in Prairie is on the land that my wife and I manage. We've got cattle. We raise. We have a cow calf operation. We produce grass-fed beef, and part of our land we seeded down to native species, mostly grasses, but native tallgrass species, and we'd like to use that as part of our regular rotation for grazing. So we're interested in how to manage that and how to get some financial benefit from it too, as well as conservation goals. So
Yeah, thanks, Dave, for
happy to
bringing your
participate.
perspective. Yeah, appreciate that. I am going to go ahead and unshare these slides and then pull up Maggie's slides, and then it'll be your chance to click me through these. Okay, Maggie, are you seeing your slides okay?
I am.
Okay, great.
Steve and I are here, and we're so glad to join you. And we're in Red Oak, Iowa, which is southwest Iowa, about 30 miles from the Nebraska border and 30 miles from the Missouri border. I live on, let's go to the next slide. This is a brief history of our farm. I'll go through it quickly, but my great-grandparents, J.E. and Retta Taylor, purchased the farm in 1899, and they named it Pleasant Prospect Farm. Their original farm was also in Montgomery County that they sold, and interestingly, he got it through an 1812 war bond from New York and moved out to here, not in 1812, but in the late 1800s. In 1920, he built actually swell terraces and evergreen windbreak. So we've had conservation on this farm for 100 years. His grandson, my dad, Earl McClown, acquired the farm in 1945 and did multi-species rotation of corn, small grains, and cattle pastures, and had erosion control ponds. In the 80s, they began contour no-till conservation practices, added 2 terraces and a grass waterway. And the east half of our farm is flat because we're on the west side of East Nishnabotna River watershed. The west half of the farm is a steep hill, and that is some of our best land. So we have 2 different kind of contours, which you'll see later. In the 90s, my father passed away in 1990. My mom took over the farm management and managed it until she passed away in 2009. She brought in Lisa and Brian Huff as the farm operators and added a grass waterway. In 2004, my mother signed the year that Conservation Stewardship Program came into being. She signed a 10-year contract on that, which meant putting conservation across all the land. And that included planting the first native prairie plot. And so in 2011, 2012, I'm the great granddaughter of J.E. Taylor, and my husband, Steve, moved to the farm. I inherited it, and Steve treats it as if it's his own. We named it Resilient Farms because we recognized all the environmental pressures on the land with climate disruption. And so we thought that was a more appropriate name at this time, and we installed a solar array. In 2013, we added some terraces and tile, added a produce garden, and we managed the Red Oak Farmers Market. And we put in our first cover crop test of 23 acres. In 2014, I heard about the Iowa State University STRIPS program of working with prairie strips interseeded among row crops. And so I jumped in with my brother. I think we were the first non-research farm to join this program. And we started small because I don't have a lot of cropland. So my goal was really to try to get rid of all the introduced grass species on the farm, and to, mainly brome, and replace that with native prairie species. And so, and then we also began prepping a 2.4 acre CRP riparian buffer along the creek, which was all reed canary grass. They had cut down all the trees on the creek while I was absent from the farm. In 2015, we planted 1,600 native trees, shrubs along the creek, and then put prairie mix under it as the nurse crop and to hold the soil until we got grass reestablished. And again, did more cover crop testing. In 2016, I think that is, we seeded 2 native prairie pollinator plots. We did a controlled burn on our prairie strips. We added some more tiles, a waterway. 2017, we overseeded on the prairie strips. We were finding we were getting some spray drift, and so we'd have a lot of foxtail on the edges. So we overseeded those and added more pollinator plots. And we decided to aerial seed all of our row crop area with cover crops. 2018, we added a terrace and a prairie waterway, and we began preparation of a 2.2 acre prairie strip that is a dilapidated fence line, again, trying to get rid of the brome grass and introduce species on the farm any place we could without taking land out of crop production. We also added another CSP prairie plot. We are now on our 3rd CSP contract. And in 2019, we completed the 2.2 acre prairie strip seeding, and we added some more terraces. I'm reticent to add so many terraces, but as I said, I have very steep terrain on the west half of my farm. And then I seeded that erosion basin dam and the edges of it in prairie but it took a lot of work to convince the NRCS that I can plant prairie instead of brome. So here's an aerial view of our farm. The upper left is the view of the building site. You see our produce garden at the lower right of that photo, and the house. There's a 120-year-old farmhouse, and then we have a passive house that we built, and our solar arrays there. And the other photo is looking south on our farm. The riparian buffer there is the diagonal line in the foreground. At the very back, you see some of those terraces, and that's where our prairie strips are. This is, I won't read too much about this, but this shows the state of the farm when my mom passed away in 2009. 2 terraces, an eroded waterway, 1 CRP waterway, dilapidated ponds, and the diagonal at the lower right below the dilapidated ponds label, that's the creek where we put the riparian buffer. This is a map that was done by the Strips, Iowa State University Strips group, showing the terrain and the CSR of the soil on my land. So as you can see, the crosshatch areas are steep terrain, 12% or greater grade. So that's why I've had to almost put terraces on the upper, that's the west end of my farm. And the green at the bottom is the low, the flat part of the farm. Now, this is a map 2018 of what we've done. I've already described it, so you can see there where we have pollinator plots. On the right-hand side, this is Old 34. It's a paved road, and it's now a county paved road. So I put pollinator plots as kind of a buffer strip along there from a neighboring farmer who's very conventional. And then now this is 2019, 2023. The red areas are future plans. This in the middle to the left, the 2020 prairie strip and wetland, that's the 2.2 acre strip we put in this last year. And we can go through these quickly. This is, we learned a lot when I'm starting in 2014 with the strips. Here we are with the drill, the Montgomery County Pheasants Forever drill. We planted 7 grasses, 25 forbs. That was the cedar to move on. Here's the strip summer of 2014. You can see it's the crops on either side as it was growing. And we did have partridge pea the first year. And by July, we had black-eyed Susans, but we also had a lot of foxtail come in on the strip edges. Here's June of 2016, a year later, and in the center front is my favorite prairie plant, the rattlesnake master. I don't know why, I love those. And you can see Steve in the background is weed whacking and pulling. We hand pulled weeds because we couldn't mow this area very well. And I'd forgotten this. We used Canada wild rye as a nurse crop because it's fairly steep and we knew we wouldn't be able to get in and mow the first year. And I'd forgotten that we used that as a nurse crop. Move on. Oh, Laura, is it frozen? Oh, there. Okay, June, here's some more of the species that we found. We have cup plant, big blue stem. I love side oat scrama, lots of echinacea. Okay. Here we can see butterflies returning. As Ruth said, it's wonderful to have the birds and the butterflies and the bees. We have lots of bees in our strip. And we have wild bergamot, purple and white prairie clover. But again, you see the edge along the crop, we continue to have foxtail. But somebody said, if you have to have foxtail as your nurse crop or in a prairie, foxtail's not bad. Here's our controlled burn we did on December 22 of 2016. Steve and I have done all of our own controlled burns. I guess you could call us pyromaniacs. We got a very good burn, and you can see the building site in the background there. This was a good time to do it. It was following soybeans, so we didn't have a lot of stover that could catch fire. Here's 2017 after the prescribed burn, more varieties. We do have one area in this strip that continues to have a lot of brome in it, so we think we're going to have to go in and do some work. It's right in the middle of the strip, and we don't know why. I think our farmer drives across it as a shortcut sometimes. Anyway, we're going to deal with that. And here's 2018 Compass Plant and Blazing Star. Here's our 2.2. This is mainly showing you the challenges we had. We thought it would take 1 year to prepare this strip, but it was a dilapidated fence line that had been ignored, had a lot of Canada thistle in it, and
buried fencing.
Buried fencing.
A lot of wire under the ground.
And so here we are pulling fence, trying to just get at it to get started. We bought this large commercial John Deere mower so we could mow the area. We tried doing the repeated mowing of the thistle, trying to deplete the root system, and had marginal success, but we worked at it for 2 years. We wanted to not use chemicals if we could. And we also kept finding rocks that our farmer had just dumped along the fence line. And we couldn't do that if we were going to mow. So we were moving huge rocks, you know, and for the glacial till, you get a lot of rocks keep coming up to the surface, and farmers love to just throw them off into the grass. Okay. Here is another scene. We finally got the fence. You can see a fence post in this left photo, kind of in the middle there in front of the mower. We finally got the fence pulled out, and this is what the strip looked like as we were mowing it. But then we have horse nettles too, huge horse nettle problem. Keep going. Here's the final prep of the site, final mowing, we finally gave up and we sprayed with herbicide. We had to kill the grass. And then we did have some dirt work done to try to, because the erosion from the hill had come down on the fence line. And so we had some really steep areas. So we had a little dirt work done to reduce that slope. We did a controlled burn in November. Actually, it ended up being an uncontrolled burn because you see the willow trees there in that picture. That was already a little prairie area and it burned. But we were like, well, it's never had a controlled burn, so let's just let it burn. And it's actually come back beautifully. So it worked out well. And here we are. For the first time, I have now seen an Iowa wild rose that reestablished in this prairie strip immediately. I love that because they used to grow all over the farm when I was a kid in the 50s and 60s. And the milkweed has come back immediately. But on the far lower right, you see the Canada thistle is still there, no matter, we worked at it for 3 years. And here, that was the top left, right is the first mowing of the strip this year to control it. And we're about to go out and mow it for the second time this week.
Well, thank you so much, Maggie and Steve, for sharing those pictures of the whole process. I think we saw everything from site preparation to several years worth of establishment of the plant. So that was really interesting. Thank you. It sets the stage well for a lot of the parts of our conversation coming up. And so now that we're all here, we've kind of got our introductions done. I hope I haven't forgotten anything before we launch into the question and answer portion, where we really get into the meat of the panel discussion here. I want to let you know, if you're in the audience that and have joined us more recently, that we have disabled your microphone. But we would love it if you added questions into the chat, and Sarah Nisi is going to be monitoring the chat, and we have a few pauses within our conversation where we'll hope to include some of your audience questions as well. But I guess I'll go ahead and kick off the first question unless anybody has any logistical questions or thoughts before we get started. Good to go? Okay, all right, here we go. And whoever wants to answer, just unmute yourself and I'll look for those look for those microphones being off and ask you if you want to talk.
Hey, Laura.
Yeah, Sarah.
Sorry, I just realized Allie and Kevin haven't had a chance to talk yet.
Thank you. Oh my goodness. Yeah. Yeah, we wanted to include some of the people who work with very intensely with landowners in helping them develop seed mixes and planning their plantings and then monitoring those afterward. And those are our conservation planners. So thank you so much, Sarah, for bringing that up. Why didn't you guys speak up for yourselves? Allie, do you want to talk a little bit, introduce yourself and kind of what you're thinking about bringing to the panel today? Are you able to unmute? Okay, I'll ask you to unmute and then that should do it.
All right, yeah, thanks, Laura. It was not letting me unmute myself.
Yeah.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm super excited to be here. My name is Allie Rath. I work for Pheasants Forever and Quail Forever as a Farm Bill wildlife biologist. There's about 8 of us around the state right now. We each cover about 3 to 4 counties, and we work directly with our great partners at the Natural Resources Conservation Service. Those service centers that really produce that conservation reserve program and a bunch of different other federal programs that are available to private landowners. And that's what we do. We work one-on-one with private landowners, and we help you guys create and enhance wildlife habitat on your farm and try and figure out if there's a good program that will help financially assist you with that, give you a bunch of our technical assistance as well, and just like Laura was saying, you know, help you along through that whole process of whatever you might need. So great to be here.
Okay, great. Thank you, Allie. And Kevin, now's your turn. Saving the best for last, right?
Yeah, that's right, Laura. No, I'm like Allie. I'm happy to be here. I'm the private lands wildlife biologist for the DNR down here in Southeast Iowa, as we call it, beautiful Southeast Iowa, wet, inundated, beautiful Southeast Iowa. I've been in this job for, I'll start my 22nd year shortly in August. So I've been down here that long, and my main goal is working with my 24 counties, my private landowners, like Allie said, are great conservation partners with Farm Service Agency, Natural Resources Conservation Service, county conservation boards, Pheasants Forever, all the partners. So my main job is to help train NRCS staff, and also go out and work with private landowners, write wildlife plans, burn plans, assist with conservation plans. So we have Allie and I and the other conservation partners that do this kind of planning have great jobs, and we get to work with the private landowners most every day of the week. So I'm happy to be here and happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thanks so much. I'm glad that we have you on board as well as the landowners and people of varying ranges of experience too. So I'm sure that that'll enrich our conversation today. So thanks, Sarah, for catching me on that. So for the landowners, our first question is, what initially got you interested in conservation practices that use native seed?
I guess I'll jump in.
Go ahead, Ruth.
So earlier, I just went right to the photos because I've been like a photographer forever and I didn't really introduce myself. Oxbow Farms, Iowa, Facebook, Instagram. I own 5 farms, 4 in Iowa and 1 in South Dakota. They all have CRP, Conservation Reserve Program. Land is very important. My father, who was the visionary and the financier of the entire farm business, had CRP from the beginning and always loved CRP. So that was kind of just like a sponge, just like I just was brought up with that, him talking about CRP. So that was just a natural fit. What was the rest of the question? What brought you to it?
Yeah, what was it that initially got you interested in those conservation practices, and particularly those that use native seed?
Well, I guess it's education of just understanding. I believe that Iowa is the most changed landscape in the country from any other state. So understanding that the native peoples and the bison and the prairie that was here just since like what the late 1800s, just blink your eyes, just this little bit of history that we've been in, it's just radically changed. And so realizing that there were nonprofits, I've worked with Pheasants Forever, Xerces, the Environmental Defense Fund, Trees Forever, that want to collaborate, NRCS, with the landowner to help restore and get those roots back in the ground and get away from the monoculture and get some habitat for wildlife and all of the insects that need nectar. And so it just was such a no-brainer to do the native seed, you know, and I have been getting it mostly from Hoxie and Pheasants Forever, and I haven't tried Allendan yet, but that's the local one here too.
Yeah, and we'll talk more later about that process of purchasing native seed, but it's interesting you bring up some of the local or area native seed dealers. It's important. Maggie yeah, go ahead, Maggie.
Oh, let's see.
Well, we were forced, you know, with a decision when Maggie's mom died, what to do with she and her siblings, what to do with the land. They had three farms actually, and they ended up selling one and buying one of her brothers out. But we had to decide, and we were reaching a point in our lives where we could retire and go do something else. And so we had to deal with that question, you know, almost it was thrust upon us. It was probably good timing because, you know, we'd been thinking for a long time living in cities, but just thinking and learning about the environmental issues we were facing from climate change to other pollution and resource depletion. And then, so we decided to move back here and move here and spend our rest of our lives working to make it something good, sustainable, if possible. And that involved learning quite a bit about invasive species, monoculture, crop rotations, and soil health has become the biggest focus for us lately because it's literally foundational to how these other things.
And having been gone from the farm for 40 years, when moving back, I was like, this does not look like the farm I grew up in the 50s and 60s. The weeds are different, everything. And having learned about prairie, and we were living in Texas, so we went to several tall grass prairie areas and like the Lady Bird Johnson Wildflower Center. And I said, and the farmers are so big, they don't take care of the field borders the way they used to. So we said, we're on the farm, we can help our farmer take care of the field borders. And as I mentioned, my determination to eradicate reed canary grass and brome grass and weeds. I mean, when I was young, a bad weed was a buttonweed. Now these days, it's like ragweed is turned into water hemp, is turned into Palmer amaranth. I mean, it's just awful. And I didn't see the amount of wildlife that we used to have. So it was really that if we just want to turn our farm back to more of the prairie that was here.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. Anybody who says it's simple hasn't looked very closely at it, I think. Dave.
Yeah, my interest in conservation started the last year of my engineering degree at Iowa State. I had some spare, I had an extra semester I had to finish some classes and was able to squeeze in some non-engineering classes, and I took some forestry classes, and I thought just for fun. And that kind of introduced me to the idea that I'd never thought about it. Iowa was not always corn and soybeans. It actually had a natural landscape, and it was kind of this dawning realization that not only is that ecosystem pretty much gone, but it was actually really cool. It's really interesting. And then I went to the Neil Smith National Wildlife Refuge, and that was really inspiring too. So those two things kind of spurred an interest in prairie, especially conservation in general. Yeah, then I had the opportunity to come back to Iowa. I'd been a wildfire ecologist in California with the Forest Service for 5 years or so, and came back in 2010, and had always wanted to farm. And now we've got my wife and I have the chance to manage this land, and my in-laws are on the verge of retiring, so we've got the opportunity to either rent from them as they transition out or eventually buy more of their land. So hopefully we can integrate prairie and conservation and still be able to make a living at it too.
Yeah, I sure hope so. And thank you for all those perspectives, because it's really neat that the entry point into this was, I mean, I think there's some commonalities, but it was a little bit different from each of you. The idea that you were an engineering student and got excited about forestry is just kind of, that's a really cool switch. So my second question to you is also kind of a general one, and that is, what are your conservation goals? And if you had to rank them, which one would come first? And I'd like to invite anybody in the audience also to, you know, if you're engaged in conservation, you know, on your land or home landscape even, what are your conservation goals too? But let's go ahead and start with Dave, since you were last time.
Sure. Our primary goal is to maintain the soil, but also improve. I mean, not just maintain it, but improve our soil quality. So for us, that metric is primarily organic matter. So we've been taking soil samples since we got married in 2012, and have a nice set of data points from various sampling locations across the farm, and have watched our organic matter improve over the last few years, and it's been exciting. We put a lot of work into our grazing management and do very intensive rotation. So the cattle will graze a small area at high density, and then we keep them off for 30 to 60 days so that land gets a chance to recover, incorporate all the trampled forage that's not eaten, and regrow. And that's our primary goal. And then also what my father-in-law always says, if you can't make a living doing what you're doing, the neighbor's going to buy your farm and turn it right back into corn. So we have to be able to nothing wrong with corn, I guess, but we need to be able to make sure we can sustainably do what we're doing. So it's not just a fun hobby, but we've got to be able to make it sustainable financially too.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's kind of a neat symmetry that your marriage and your conserving of the soil started at the same time. You can track that progress. Maggie, would you like to take that one on? So what are your conservation goals, and which one comes tops for you?
Well, it's one started out, of course, erosion prevention, with half my farm running down the hill towards the east end of my farm. But it's really soil health, because if I had healthy soil, and I used to tell people when I lived in New York City and Chicago and Dallas, I said, you've never seen soil till you've been to Iowa. But then moving home, I'm like, no, the soil, I hate to say it, the soil is depleted. I can tell it's depleted. So building up the mycorrhizal fungi, the whole biome, I'm fascinated by all of that because I'm a bit of a science type geek too. But minimizing erosion, need to increase infiltration of moisture, hold the water on the soil. And also I've mentioned get rid of invasive or introduced species as much as possible. And my number one though is soil health, because I think that's the thing that will help everything.
Okay, thank you. And a lot of parallels to what Dave was saying. And Ruth, go ahead.
Yeah, I echo Maggie and Dave with soil health and the livestock under the land, under our feet, that just because we can't see it. Ray Archuleta has all kinds of great slides of that stuff in his talks. I I am selfish in that I'm an artist and I want to see pretty landscapes, and it's just like exterior design, just seeing layers and layers of flowers out there versus just the brome that was there. The brome doesn't have the pollinators and the life in it. But when you start walking through a pollinator field, you're just kicking up all kinds of stuff out there, and they're just beautiful. And so it just becomes art, like a living art restoration. I'm living on 2.5 acres of retired crop ground that was in corn and soybeans overlooking a 4.5 acre pond, which I scratched my head because this is the most beautiful place to live. And it was just corn and beans for like the last 20 years. And I'm sure all the neighbors were like, what's going on over there? But I was smart enough to build my house here. And it's all going to be prairie restoration. And what's interesting is that I didn't know how much wildlife was here. On a scale of 1 to 10, my house in California is like a 2, and this is like a 7, 8. I have so much of a zoo out here going on. I can't even imagine when I really get these 220 trees and shrubs I've been hand watering, mulching, deer protecting, as well as this prairie restoration. I mean, it's coming to life. It's just incredible. The bird song I go to sleep with and wake up to, you can't put a price on that. And that is truly from the native plantings. And these are all natives, all the DNR, all the small trees and shrubs. So super excited about it.
Mm. Yeah, it's really fun to hear all of you discuss these things. And I think there's those functional qualities that we all recognize the importance of keeping the soil on the land, improving infiltration and building soil organic matter over time. But that's compatible with these other things that kind of go into that aesthetic realm is really, yeah, that's beautiful. We can have it all. At least I hope we can. So the nitty gritty, where it all hits the road here is, how did you fund those conservation projects that you've done? And how much of a factor was seed cost in your decision making? So it's kind of a two-part question, I know, and we can review that if we want to do that. And maybe Maggie, you have lots of different native plantings. I'll let you get started on that since you have a lot of experience in that.
Yeah, I'll jump in because when I first started, as I said, we did 2 little tiny prairie strips, and I was like, where do I get the seed? Well, I've gotten help with funding from Pheasants Forever because I use the Iowa grass program. I buy a lot of my seed mixes through them, which actually it comes from Allendan, which makes it a very Southwest Iowa eco-type seed. If it's coming from them, I can designate that. Trees Forever, they have a wonderful program, Working Watersheds and Beyond, which helps with native. We use that for our riparian buffer and for our strips. So we've had actually 3 grants from them. And I have to say, Iowa State Prairie Strips Group, they wanted to help us, but they said, our funding is meager. We got $75 for being with them. But I want to acknowledge that they keep apologizing that they couldn't provide more money.
Lots of expertise, though.
But yeah, lots of expertise and help, and being part of that cooperator group and meeting every year with the other cooperators, that's priceless. My first strip, I just researched, PFI had a list of native prairie sources and researched and talked to 2 or 3 of them. And I ended up buying from Austinbaugh Prairie, and they did a custom mix for me of ecotypes. And that was the 25 Forbes 7 grasses. And I looked, and then I used the Canada Wild Rye as the nurse crop, and I spent nearly $600 for 1.25 acres on that. And I didn't even bat an eye because I thought, well, I want to do this. As I've expanded and done that, I've used a lot of the Pheasants Forever mixes, and I think their prices, of course, Allie could address this better probably. Their mixes, they range from $190 to $375 per acre. And like the Leopold mix, it has like 20 grasses or 11 grasses and 60 forbs in it. If you want to get wild, go with a Leopold mix. The one thing I will say, my brother has worked with me on a lot of these projects. He did prairie strips at the same time. He wanted to do his own mix. And I think he used about 4 grasses and 11 forbs. I used 7 and 25. You can see the line between our prairie strips. His, it does not have the diversity, hasn't established as well. And he also did a wetland restoration, and it did not establish. The reed canary came back in because I don't think he used as diverse a mix as he should. And as I've been doing this, I've learned more and more. The more diversity you can use, the better chance you'll get good establishment, the better chance it will squeeze out the invasive species or introduced species. And I think my brother has learned that. So we enjoy working together, but it's interesting to see how we take different approaches. He's like, well, I'll figure it out. He's a forester from Iowa State too, I shouldn't say that, conservationist, but yeah, he goes, I'll figure it out. I know how to do this. And I'm like, no, I'm going to ask some people. I'm going to ask advice of the experts, and I'm not going to put a price tag limit on it.
Okay, thank you, Maggie. And I think you've already kind of preempted one of my questions and I'll throw this into the mix as well. And that is, what advice would you give to a landowner facing sticker shock from a recommended seed mix? And your experience between you and your brother is kind of illustrates maybe what your advice would be to that person.
Well, actually, I also go in there on our CSP. The contract is really with my farm operator now, and he got an NRCS recommended mix, and it was $600 an acre or something. And he came to me and he was like, what is this? So I researched it and then talked with our NRCS office, said, do we have to use this mix? And I said, no, that's just a suggestion. So I went to the Pheasants Forever list and came up with a comparable mix that was approved. You know, there's no one answer, and it was cheaper. It was $280 an acre. But my farm operator, he goes, man, this seed must be like gold. And I said, it is.
So it sounds like you've had a lot of experiences where you've looked at like a custom mix and you've compared that with other mixes. And do you think that it would be useful to landowners to have more guidance in how to evaluate different seed mixes and to make effective comparisons between those?
Absolutely. And the other thing that I'm really now getting into is understanding of the local ecotypes. I mean, a lot of things say it's an Iowa ecotype. Well, we know Northeast Iowa and Southwest Iowa are very different soil types and environment. And so I'm kind of really getting into the very local ecotype. And it's actually John Judson, who's from up by Exira. He's from Deadman. He advised me about that, of really looking, I can't remember the name of the book, but it tells what species have been identified in what counties. And he told me if it's not in Montgomery County, look at the counties north or south, because they're the similar soil types. And so I'm really I'm becoming nerdy about it. He told me purple coneflower is not native to Montgomery County. So I go, oh, I have an introduced species.
I think you're okay. So let's see, we strayed a little bit from the original question I asked. So I want to give, let's move to Dave. How did you fund your conservation projects, and how much of a factor was seed cost, and what kind of went into those decisions?
Yeah, for sure. The CRP that my in-laws put in 6 years ago, that was funded all through the NRCS. So the seed cost was substantial. They didn't pay it out of pocket, but I'm sure they wouldn't have paid over $500 an acre for that seed if it had been straight out of their pocket. So we're fortunate to have this incredibly diverse planting out there now that we can all enjoy. And my in-laws are the ones that really enjoy going out there just to drive through it and walk through it and see the pheasants and the deer and all the wildlife. It's a mix of, I think there's 11 grass species, 3 kind of shrubs, and then 40 Forbes, I believe. So I don't know if those are all still out there, but I'm sure most of them have made it this far. So it's really diverse. And as far as the land that my wife and I put into native species, our goals were different because we intended to primarily use that for grazing and as a forage resource. So most of all of our other land is in cool season introduced forage. We try to keep it as diverse as possible, but it's still the usual grasses like orchard grass, brome, meadow fescue, tall fescue. And we thought those are all great for forage in the spring and in the fall again, they're all cool seasons. But then in the summer, if we could have kind of a drought reserve and something that would have a little higher quality forage and still be perennial and persistent and hopefully productive, some of these tall grass species would be beneficial as forage, and then also be mostly available in the hot part of the summer when the others are dormant. So that seed mix that came from John Judson, and when the CRP mix was being developed, I had a whole list of species that I was particularly interested in, both because of their roots, the rooting depth, or their type of roots for soil building, and then also as forage. And I told John, here's an idea for some species, and he did the same thing to me. He looked at a list and said, "Well, sorry, these aren't native in Audubon County, so I can't do it." So we didn't get those, but that's fine. But for the grazing area that my wife and I own, we paid $150 per acre for that seed, and obviously it's heavy on the grasses, very light on the forbs, and we paid that out of our pocket. Our other seeding cost for introduced cool season grasses tends to be about $100 per acre, so it's more expensive than that. A whole lot cheaper than a true diverse prairie type seeding. But we figured that was a long-term investment, so it was worth the money to us. And when you think about it, if you're paying even $500 an acre, and that lasts for 50, well, let's say 20 years, 50 years, maybe a couple generations, ideally, per year, that's a pretty small investment. So that's what I would tell somebody if they were shocked at the cost initially.
I think I'm going to say that quote. Prorate it per year. Ruth, would you like to weigh in on those questions about funding and seed cost and sticker shock?
Yeah, so we split up the Rabinowitz Family Limited Partnership into 2 trusts. And so my Oxbow Farms has my half of it. So I still have to do all my spreadsheets, but I have like a couple hundred acres of CRP. And most of the funding was through the NRCS. It's duck habitat, pheasant habitat, quail habitat, buffers up against every type of water, creeks, streams, buffers around the farm, had some wetland. And so that was all kind of running through cost share with the USDA. So that wasn't too painful to get that going. I do prescribe burn on everything I can possibly do, unless the contractor just says it's way too much for him and I have to do a light tillage, but I don't do any mid-contract management spraying. And then I was fortunate where I became involved with the Environmental Defense Fund, and they gave me a grant to seed down these 2.5 acres and do my little fruit tree orchard for pollinators at my home site. And then Women Food Agriculture Network gave me a little bit of money for like a red oak tree. And then the Xerces was fantastic. And I was part of their SIG, their Conservation Innovation Grant. And I just walked that a few days ago. And it's like its 5th year and has had like 2 or 3 burns and it's looking fantastic. So it's been kind of those agencies. And yeah, sometimes the seed is like $500 an acre. But it's a whole acre, try to go to the garden center and buy something for an acre, it's a long-term investment. And so you could get the DNR plants for $1 each, 25, red buds for $25. So there's other ways that you can save on other things. So you just can't skimp, you know, on the seeding. It's really important.
Yeah, I think I'm hearing this common theme from all of you, that it's a long-term investment. You got to think of it over the lifetime of that investment. And then I kind of jotted down a list of all the different funding sources that all of you had found, and it's quite quite a long list, including, you know, funding it yourself. And I wondered, take a little bit longer on this, but how about the conservation planners? You probably work with a lot of landowners who look at that price tag of a custom mix, say, that you provide them, and their eyes probably get big and their hair sticks up. And what do you say when you're introducing that kind of thing, or is that have you prepared them for that in advance so that they don't have that response?
I'll go ahead and jump in, Laura. Yeah, we hear it a lot. I mean, when you have a big coverage area and people will look at, farmers, landowners, recreational people will look at that, you know, that price tag on that seed and go, wow, that's incredible. But if it's a 10-year, 15-year CRP contract, 50%, even greater, you know, cost share from FSA and NRCS on CRP, that kind of helps them wrap their mind around it a little bit. It's a long-term investment. If you treat it right, if you manage it right from the beginning with, you know, putting it in the ground, on the ground, mowings, you know, mid-contract management, like Ruth said, with burning and whatever you have to use as your mid-contract management tool. I want to mention one that hasn't been mentioned yet, and that's the DNR's Prairie Partners program that we've had around for a lot of years. That's 50% cost share and a 10-year habitat agreement for recreational landowners. It's great. We can go down to as small as an acre. And I don't know how much Allie uses it, but I don't know how many contracts I've written down here since I've been down here. Too many to count. And I'd have to take off my shoes too to count that high. So that's another great funding source. We have 6 native plant dealers along with Pheasants Forever. They're included as a, you know, as a seed dealer, as a vendor that people can jump in, and 50% off on a $500 mix may not sound like much on an acre, but take that $250 and put it towards management or another project. So.
Yeah, thank you, Kevin. Allie, did you want to add something to that?
Sure. Yeah, when we are working with landowners that are going into some sort of program that is performing a little bit of cost share, it's a lot more easy for landowners to swallow. And sometimes I would actually like for some of the landowners to take a little more time to think about that seed mix. Sometimes our programs just kind of, you know, push you through the door a little bit and move on to the next one. And we just say, yeah, you're going to be cost shared, but it's good to stop and think about up front, because lots of times what we might talk about in the beginning planning stages, once they get that seed order to a seed company, sometimes that seed company can convince them of other things, because they'll say, oh, well, this seed mix is cheaper. And then we have forgotten about the whole diversity and the benefit of that. And sometimes those landowners are easy to bite on that chunk of information and just go with that. So almost forcing that conversation or that realization that, hey, some of this can be expensive up front before they even get to seeing the sticker is important, so that they don't get easily convinced otherwise later on. But more often than not, I actually have more kind of sticker shock with what I'm suggesting or requiring for seed bed prep and preparing the seed bed even more than the actual seed costs is what I feel like I might even get more pushback from. So seed dealers here in Iowa have been making it easier, I think, for people to go the diversity way. So I've been kind of pleasantly surprised that I haven't had as much pushback as one might think.
Oh, that's great. So sometimes once that planned mix goes to the dealer, then there might be some substitutions made and that kind of thing. So I think that kind of highlights, I think it came up with Maggie in the beginning, is that some guidance on how to evaluate seed mixes and compare them. Because just because they have a list of this number of species doesn't mean that the proportions are the same and that kind of thing. Right. Okay, that's good points. Yeah, Maggie, what did you want to add?
I forgot one more funding source, REAP, Iowa, IDOLS, REAP. I got, I haven't been eligible for CRP on any of my prairie strips or any of my areas because as I said, I'm replacing brome grass and field borders that have no cropping history. So EQIP and REAP, and the REAP it's Forest and Native Grasses Program cost share. And we actually had REAP and Trees Forever on our 2.2 prairie strip because it was so much work to prepare that over a 3-year period.
Wow. Yeah. And that preparation is another one of those things that I think pays off long-term.
And we were able to do a lot of the work, which helped us a great deal since we're retired. But I can't imagine as Ali said, the cost to prepare the site. For us, it was kind of a labor of love. But we were able to do it. But if our farmer had to do it, it wouldn't have happened the way he would have gone in and just sprayed. They wouldn't have had the time to try to mow everything.
Yeah, good point. I think at this point, Sarah, were there any questions in the chat yet, or are we still waiting on those?
We do have 2 questions, and one is directed towards Maggie and one is directed towards Dave. So I'm hoping that we can do both of these quickly. So
go right ahead.
Maggie, I'll start off with you. This is from Dan. He says, first off, I adored hearing about all your projects. What tips would you give to other producers trying to successfully establish prairie strips through their fields?
I would say work very closely with the Prairie Strips team. They have done tons of research and they have knowledge. They will do maps. They'll map and they will lay out your strips and work with you closely. And just be prepared though that make sure that your strips, if you have a farm operator, if you aren't the operator, make sure the strips are laid out so they can be farmable because you also have row crops between the strips, and be prepared to maintain them, have access to them, to weed them, to mow them. And as I said, you'll probably have some herbicide drift damage, things like that. Steve, do you have anything to add?
Well, only just, I don't know. We were able to pretty much pick, I think in every case, areas that weren't being cropped, at least most. We expanded them a little and took maybe a couple rows, but old fence lines and collapsed terraces and things that are kind of, they were already there. And like she said about the fence lines, they catch dirt and stuff coming downhill. And so you pretty much have a ridge there anyway, if it's especially if it's old. And you may even need to, part of your prep may be even needing to flatten that some with a dozer or something.
Yeah, the premise of the strip program is to put about 8 to 10% of your land, of your cropland, into strips as opposed to putting in terraces to control and to introduce more diversity of species. But we kind of jiggered the program to take fence lines and little contour grass waterways and things and did that. But if you're serious about strips, it's a practice to go between your crop rows. And so be prepared to possibly pull, 8 to 10% of your land out of production, but then you're eligible for CRP, and strips are a CRP approved practice.
Thanks for addressing that question. Maggie, what was the other one, Sarah?
Yes, so to Dave, this is kind of a 2-parter here. What native forbs do you find valuable for cattle grazing in addition to the native grasses? And then someone is curious about your field prep for that. Did you just interseed into brome or your cool season, or was it former crop ground?
Yeah, I'll start with that question. On the CRP, that was former crop ground. I think it was soybeans the year before it was seeded to prairie. And I remember my father-in-law disked it, I think twice, and he's been no-till for 15 years. So it's kind of painful to watch that, but I think it paid off. And then it was, I actually seeded it myself. John Judson brought down his drop seeder and the seed. And then I did that in, I think it was March and maybe early April to get that done. And that established really well. And I don't know if it was because of the seedbed prep or because of the year and the climate that, I mean, just the weather that particular year, but that CRP establishment has been incredibly robust. And even John was impressed and very pleased with it. And then on our land, that had been in row crops for forever. And then when we got married, we put it into annual forages. So we rented it from my parents, or from my wife's parents, and then eventually bought it. And in the transition from row crops to what it is now, perennial, kind of a mix of perennial introduced grasses and tall grass species. We did annuals, warm season and cool season annuals, all for forage and all species that would hopefully build up the soil. And kind of also the soil biology, help the transition from lots of fertilizer, synthetic inputs to hopefully being sort of self-sufficient with just legumes and grazing as far as not needing fertilizer. We didn't do any seedbed preparation. We didn't disc it or anything. And the 2 or 3 years that it was in annuals, a lot of the clovers had invaded, and it was, it made it difficult to get the grass seed down through the clover. So that did not establish very well. And we ended up having to spray that just because there were so many perennial weeds that were starting to take over. So we lost most of the forbs. Although this year, some of those are coming back. I've seen a few survivors. And then we monitored the progress of the grasses. And I told John that even after a couple of years, it looked kind of sparse. And he said, well, he came out and looked and he agreed. So he reseeded some in the winter of the next. So both of these were winter seedings. He came out the next winter or 2 winters later and added some more grass seed. And it's finally looking pretty good. So I'm not sure if I would recommend the disking, but it does seem like that paid off in these 2 cases at least.
I think there was one other. Oh yeah.
The first question, I forgot what that was.
That was the whether there were forbs that also were suitable for cattle grazing.
Yeah, the last couple of years, we've done a trial with Practical Farmers of Iowa to graze cattle on the CRP, and we're still restricted to the grazing dates that everybody else is. So we could graze in the spring, but there's really nothing growing out there in that window, and then in the summer. As far as the forbs, they would just kind of go through and nip off the flowers if there was anything flowering. Not much of the forage from the forbs was terribly palatable. If we pushed them hard, they would eat some. Some of the legumes, like the bush clover, I think, or prairie clover, indigo,
Round-headed bush clover.
creamy indigo, maybe. Got the bigger $half size leaves. At the legume, I'm not sure what the name of it is, but they would eat that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Otherwise, yeah, they didn't get much use out of the forbs, and even the grasses. I was a little surprised they'd eat the top half and leave the rest.
Interesting. Thank you. All right, and thanks for the questions in the chat. Those are appreciated. We're going to go back towards some questions about purchasing native seed, and I think some of you have mentioned some of these things already, like the seed vendors that you used and how you access that seed. Is there anything like if you haven't already told us, how you got your seed, go ahead and share that. And is there anything that the native seed dealers could do to improve that seed purchasing process? Dave, what do you think?
Yeah, I can say something about that. John Judson sent us a spreadsheet that the NRCS produces, the Iowa Native Seed Calculator. And I wish she had shown it to me sooner, like when we were first getting started, because it's a really nice spreadsheet and it kind of breaks down the costs and the diversity of the planned mix and some of the benefits. So for people that like numbers and spreadsheets, that would be a really great resource.
Mhm. Yeah, I think that's that the seed dealers are strongly encouraged by the NRCS to use that calculator in communicating with the NRCS about seed mixes, but to think of that as a communication tool with the landowner or farm operator too is an interesting thought. Yeah, thank you.
A very small side note, I'm actually allergic to Timothy grass. And so I make sure in my mixes that they're not planting Timothy grass. So if you know your allergies, that's a good thing to curtail. Because who wants to be sneezing all the time when you're walking around?
Somebody who's allergic to most prairie things but loves working with them anyway. I don't know. Maggie, what did you want to share?
Well, when I wanted to seed my water and soil erosion basin with prairies, to convince NRCS that I could do that, they wanted me to heavy up on grasses. And so I actually contacted at the Iowa Prairie, at the Pheasants Forever Native Grass Program, Matt O'Connor. And he said, just talk directly to Alan Dan. And I did. And they helped me do a custom mix that heavied up on the grasses for that. And then also, as I've learned more about different species, or I'm seeing that my prairie isn't developing as well as I like, or if I feel the forbs aren't coming through, or I'm buying individual seeds and just I'm kind of scattering them. And I'm also starting to hand harvest certain species that I really like, or I think should do well on all my farm. If it was in a mix on one strip, I'll hand harvest and then just kind of toss it around on the farm when I'm walking and trying to spread things that way, and collecting seeds. And I'm seeding the bank. We have a steep bank by our bank barn and a steep bank along the road. So I just kind of throw seeds out all the time. So I'm trying to get a real random mix kind of all over the farm.
I like that visual of you out there gathering your seeds and scattering them everywhere. Yeah. So one source is your own planting. I wonder. I just want to return to that question of, is there anything else that native seed dealers could do that would improve that process of seed purchasing and making those decisions about the seed mixes for U.S. landowners? And I know Dave
Yeah, I think
mentioned
just sort of slowing down the process. It feels like I'm pretty harried when I'm ordering. Like, I got to get this and I need it now. And so I just think that sort of taking a breath and kind of talking through the seed mix, and thinking about, do they want to know what kind of soils are out there? I mean, or do they want to know more about information about it? And then also the mid-contract management, you can interseed when you do a prescribed burn, let's say, and do some clover. I've done that on some pieces, and then sometimes I just forget, I got to get a mid-contract management done and do it. And then, there's no like conversation with the contractor, like, does it need to have, like, when you're out there, let's go together. Now that I'm here in Iowa, finally, is it thin? Let's just get some more out there in these patches that are thin. It feels like there's kind of a time crunch that happens on these things, that things are skipped over in that process. I think that everyone needs to kind of take a breath and just really think through this a little bit more together.
So that'd be just more communication ahead of deadlines and things to let you know that these things are coming up and that you're going to have to take some steps, so that you're not in that rush situation would help. Okay. Yeah, that's good.
Well, I would also say that I'm encouraged that there's more education throughout the entire system about native grasses. And at the NRCS level, not every county has an expert available that knows native grasses and forbs and prairie. And just, it depends on how much you want to get into it, but joining the Iowa Prairie Network, getting to know someone like a John Judson, getting to know your seed dealers personally if you can, just talking with people. And I think there does does need to be more education. I mean, the NRS people in most offices are spread very thin, and education has been a challenge. And now, especially with COVID, I'm kind of aware there's been a lot of people moving to different offices, and they aren't able to get together face to face. And Kevin, you can probably address that. I know it's just been a challenge throughout Iowa to even keep all the offices staffed. And so the more people can share and talk about their experiences, and PFI helps. There's a lot of people at PFI, Xerxes, Tall Grass Prairie Center. I mean, just use every resource you can.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Kevin, did you want to weigh in on the status of those county offices, regional offices? The county offices, that'd be more your bag, right, Allie?
Yeah, we both kind of cover. Allie's got, I don't know how many counties Allie has, but she's got some staff underneath of her too, because she's a senior farm bill biologist. The crazy thing was during COVID, I guess we're still in it, hopefully going out of it, but last March it really slowed down because I think people were all trying to get their wits about them, and hey, should we go to the field, and do we want people coming to our farm? And when April hit, it was just like the floodgates open. I was probably busier last year. I mean, thankfully it was awesome. Probably busier last year than I've been in my entire career. So, and NRCS around the state put on a lot of new, Allie and I and others, to go out and train and to help these new folks understand that don't let it be like a fire hose. You know, when you're drinking from the fire hose, just kind of, I agree with what Ruth said. Let's just slow down. Let's take it, an inch at a time. Don't try to go that extra mile. And I always just try to get people to understand that you do have some time. It seems like there's always a time crunch with the programs because there's contracts and we need to get all this stuff implemented. But yeah, last year was, it was bad, but it was also great in another way, because I think people focused on their farms and they focused on natives and trees and conservation. There were a ton of people. I mean, this is kind of an offshoot, but if you went into any sporting goods store, there was no fishing equipment. People were just buying everything up and going out and recreating. So that's great. So, Allie?
Yeah, absolutely, Kevin. I echo everything you said. And I would just say that, in order to get more time, if there's a chance that you could look ahead, and the sooner you can request that time or that activity or that piece of advice, the better, to give us on our end a little more time. And yeah, we just have, thankfully, we have a lot of customers that every single one of us deals with. And we all within, we meaning USDA, all kind of have our little niche of expertise. So sometimes it takes, a while from asking this person, let me get you this person, let me get you this person to get you very accurate information. But sometimes that all just takes time. So the sooner you can ask the question or request that help, the sooner and longer we'll have to be able to hopefully plan for that. But yeah, there's some tight turnaround times, some tight deadlines sometimes that there's seems to be no end in sight of that. But thankfully NRCS has added some more soil cons and some more positions to that team in Iowa, and now we just need to get them trained up. So that'll take a little while too.
I wanted to say too, Sarah's on the call. Sarah and I walked the SIG grant, 1 acre, which is walkable from my house here. And because she's so expert, she knew the names of every single, flower out there that was coming up. And then she knew the weeds and what I needed to control. And she kind of was able to say, this is like a really good, seeding now after multiple burns and kind of give me, like an A-B grade on it or something. And that I think is really, really important and very enjoyable as a landowner to say, this is successful. I have the team back 4 or 5 years later to walk the property and educate me, because I've lived in California for a long time, so I'm not as familiar with these plants. I'm still learning these native plants. And the same, walking my forests, and we're literally cutting barbed wire and opening rooms into forests I've never even been into, and discovering, oh my gosh, you have a bur oak savanna in here, a remnant. These are like 100 plus 150-year-old trees in here. And that just happened last week. And I was elated to walk it with the forester, because here I am planting a basswood, little tiny basswood, and I've got this like gigantic basswood in this forest. And we were finding like dens of possibly fox. He's pointing things out to me, pointing out the poisonous stuff too, of course. And it's like there's a lot of resources out there. Just make the appointment and get out there with the experts, and just wear your tick spray and your long sleeves and your walking poles, and don't be scared to go down steep hills, and have good boots. And that's why I go to the gym, so I can walk on my farms, so it's like, it's just so important to just use these resources of these folks that really do want to help. And they're really glad that we want to walk with them, and understand this stuff.
I know we're running short of time, but I'm going to throw in there, Ruth made me think of this too. Being a benefit of being part of the Iowa State STRIPS program is they have a lot of graduate students doing research around strips, doing entomology evaluations of bees and insects and bird counts. And we had a graduate student who came out and 2 years in a row did a plant count in our strip, and identified 24 forbs, 7 grasses, but she also identified all the weeds and other things in there too, and did a report. So that was, I felt good about it. I'm helping graduate students, I'm helping the university learn, and interacting with them, and I got a benefit of, I got a free report back.
Oh yeah, that's a win-win for sure. I love the fact that you're all kind of preempting some of my questions that are coming in later, like the importance of continuing services from seed dealers or conservation planners or contractors, and their importance in helping you make decisions about your planting. So I'm glad that you brought that up. I have my pet question. I want to get to kind of also to a question that Dave asked. It's really important to him. So I'm going to jump around a little bit in our planned questions. My pet question, if you'll forgive me for this, is how important is the genetic origin or the place where the seed is grown to you? Is that something, is it important for you that it's either Iowa genetic source or that it's grown in Iowa? Do you want to know that? And would you be willing to pay more for it?
I don't know that myself on the seed packages that I've gotten or not gotten, not been scanned to me or not been given to me. But I think it is important. That feels important to me.
Mm-hmm. Would
And paying a
you'd
little
like
bit
to have
more
that
for that.
information? You'd like those seed tags to
yeah.
come to you with that information on them, and some kind of verification that that's true.
Things in general have been kind of dumbed down, and I want the information. Farming is data.
Mhm.
Give me the data.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Maggie.
Yeah, it's very important to me. I keep the seed labels from every single planting and keep it in the file with the planting. And if there's something in there, I don't know what it is. I'm becoming obsessed with, I want it to be Iowa native.
All right. Yeah, Dave.
Yeah, our seed came from John Judson, and he's one county north of us up in Carroll County. And I think he has his own restored prairie on his property that he combines for seed. So I think a lot of that seed is maybe not from the same county, but very close. Then we found out later that some of the seed that he used for our CRP establishment came from some friends of ours about, well, one county east. who have a remnant prairie, so it's kind of cool. It's truly native seed from within a county. So
Yeah, that's
yeah,
wonderful.
that's important. I would pay a premium for that, I think.
Yeah, all right. Well, it's good to know. And I just want to put the word out there that there is a system in place in the state for certifying that, that is called the yellow tag system. And there's more information available on that in our on the TPC website. And then, so that my pet question got covered. We are now at 2:30. So if people have to leave, we forgive you. It's okay. But we've already agreed that we'll stay on and we'll continue our conversation. And you're welcome to stay with us and to listen in and to ask your questions in the chat as well. And we'll get to some more of those briefly here. But I do want to get to the question that is really most important, I think, to Dave. So, what could be done to make it financially feasible to keep land in permanent native plant cover after a CRP contract expires, say? What would you need to make that work? And it's sort of directed to you for your ideas, Dave, but if there's anybody else who has ideas on how to make that work, let us know.
We're halfway through our contract on CRP, so we've got 5 years to figure out a plan. My in-laws would really like to keep it as prairie. They also might reconsider if they lose the CRP payment and don't have any income from the crop ground rent either. So, and that said, if we were to rent that from my in-laws as pasture, the productivity in terms of cattle forage is definitely lower than what we can get from our introduced cool season pastures. So it'd be hard for us to justify paying a fair rent to him, crop ground rent, with it as prairie. But nobody wants to see it get plowed up. So we're really eager to find some solution to keep that going.
Maybe we'll put that out to the hive mind as well and see if anybody has the brilliant solution. I think Steve had something that he wanted to share on that.
Well, I mean, in an ideal world, I mean, it'd be nice to have a government program designed to transition from that to converting larger areas to prairie that can and should actually require they be grazed because that's how this whole place evolved. And so, I mean, if that's not a justification, I mean, you don't maybe not have to use just cattle, maybe sheep or other things, but other animals. But it seems like, you know, not forever, but a transition until farmers can establish the grazing pattern, establish their herds, and establish market for the meat. I don't know how many years that might be, you know, half dozen or something, but that's an idea. Just came to me. I hadn't thought about that before.
I think there could be an opportunity through some of the carbon credits programs because prairie is very good at storing carbon. And so if you could document that it's been in prairie for 10 years, which you can because it's CRP, and have it be retro, get credit retro for that, and then leave it in there and continue to get carbon credits, that might be an opportunity going forward.
It'd be nice if you could combine something like a carbon credit with that that active use as grazing land. I think that would make a lot of sense. Like you're saying that the grazing is a natural part of the system, if managed well, is very useful. Allie, you had indicated you wanted to say something here.
Yeah. So I think there's always the potential that you could re-enroll your CRP, hopefully. I would say that would maybe be, you know, look for that a year or two before it's going to expire. Hopefully the office would be in contact with you about that. And it all, you know, kind of just depends on that farm bill at the time and what practices are available. But hopefully that would be option number one. And then there is another CRP program called Grassland CRP. And it's kind of a working lands program, they call it, that you can actually be grazing or haying your CRP and continue to keep it in CRP, it's going to be a drastically reduced rental rate, but it's still something each year. And so, but that would be a ranked program around the nation. So that's, you know, a risk whether you get in or not, but that's something definitely to look at, because then you could still graze it as long as, you know, we'd work with you to set up a grazing plan for that area. And then there are some new kind of CRP options looking like they're, you know, we're going to do some pilot kind of options. There's a Clear 30 CRP program that specifically is kind of going in that carbon direction. And right now it's reduced or restricted to water quality specific practices, which normally is, you know, your smaller fields. But depending on how well this pilot goes, maybe there'll be more opportunities in the future for the bigger chunks of ground or whatnot. So there seems to be more and more programs coming out, and I would just definitely recommend checking in with your local USDA office or your local conservation professional a year or two out, just to maybe start figuring out those details of what might be coming up here in the new future. So
That's great. Thank you for weighing
Yeah,
in, Allie.
I think that's on the water buffers I have against creeks and stuff. Yeah, I put some of that in for 15 years. Really glad that I did that for the CRP, and I would definitely re-enroll them. But if they didn't come up for re-enrollment, I don't know what I would do, because to get that machinery right back on those banks, eroding and plowing right into the roots of these gorgeous trees and just right up on it, it seems like there could be some kind of like government easement where you have some kind of tax advantage or some kind of something happens where that kind of becomes more permanent against the water, because it just doesn't even seem right to have tillage happening right up on an oxbow lake or right up on, you know, these creeks and these waterways. It's very counterintuitive. And all those nitrates and everything we're trying to accomplish that we don't want to have happen. Keep that filtration and those roots there, and give some tax benefits or something to the landowner if it doesn't re-enroll in a CRP.
Mhm. Yeah, I think that was, I was hoping that we would talk about, you know, how policy could adapt to encourage more people to participate in these programs, as well as keeping those practices on the land, you know, in perpetuity. Yeah, that's great. Let's see. I guess there's just a couple more questions that I just really want to dig into that we haven't really covered, although it was mentioned briefly before, and that was when you consider the projects where you have used native seed, what does success look like to you? How do you know when your project is successful? And this is open to anybody on the panel.
But
The
I
feeling of joy walking through the flowers and seeing and just kicking up red and all the different butterflies, and you feel like you've done something positive for the world. And it's way beyond money. It's way beyond my lifetime. And it's for everyone.
I have one CSP planting that was on highly eroded, degraded ground. And it probably should never have been row cropped, because when I was a child, it was a pasture for our cattle. So we took that out of production, put it into CSP, native prairie. The first year, there were like 5 little plants coming up, and there were rocks exposed, bare ground, a few little eroded rivulets from the rain, and a few mare's tail. The second year, there were about 40 plants. I'm like, oh, this is horrible. This year, it's just covered with beautiful flowers and things. There's still mare's tail, There are still bare spots, but there's the grasses are coming through. There's prairie clover. There's black-eyed Susan. So the third year, I'm starting to say, man, this feels good because this poor soil is no longer bare. It's no longer going to wash away. And I'm envisioning what's going on below ground.
Mm.
So to me, it's a success because it was so pathetic.
So success is something that you actually experience when you're out walking in your land.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
something that you imagine below the surface. And it's something that you have to be patient for, is what I'm hearing from both of you.
And we go out to work, like to mow and pull weeds and things. And Steve is working and I'm out there with my camera taking pictures and walking around and counting plants. And he goes, get back to work. And I'm like, I'm documenting it.
It's part of the work. It's data.
Yeah.
And farming is data. I heard that from Ruth. Yeah, Dave, what does success look like to you?
Yeah, we've seen over the last 5 years, we've seen the annual weeds really decline, especially the grasses. You can go out there and there's very little foxtail or any of the other barnyard grasses that are just gone, seems like. There's very little of the perennial non-native grasses. The waterways weren't seeded. Those are still reed canary grass, but there's not much brome out there. And if it is, it's not spreading, which is great.
Mhm.
The major success that I would like to see still and hope to see is reduction of the Canada thistle. Talked to John Judson about that, and he said, there's not much you can do. You can burn it. It helps a little bit, and we've done that. We burned half last year and half this year. And he just said over time, if the diversity is there and the prairie is well established, it'll eventually outcompete some of those
Mhm.
perennial weeds. So if we get rid of those, or at least get them where they're not spreading, that will be a major indicator of success to me.
Oh, that's great. Thank you all. I guess maybe this might be the final question. There might be other questions from the audience. I don't know, Sarah, are there any others that you've seen?
We do not have additional questions in the queue.
Okay, well then I kind of have, unless there's something really a glaring issue that I've forgotten that you all want to bring up. What are the most important lessons that you've learned from implementing native plantings on your land? Maybe these have already come up in our discussion, but what do you want to leave us with? Considering all steps of that process.
I think that you have to be patient because I was told like it's not going to look good right away and it needs that mowing. And the CRP buffers that got the mowing look a lot better than the ones that did not get the mowing.
Mm-hmm.
And mowing it high. And yeah, I think by year 2 or 3, mostly like year 3, it's starting to look good. So it is that patience, I think.
A few lessons from our perspective is would be the same thing that Ruth just said. You know, patience. The first few years is going to look rough, no matter how well it's established. And we expected that, and it's still kind of shocking to see all the weeds the first few years. And then the second would be, I forgot what I was going to say. Well, one of the other ones that I was thinking of was, in terms of forage, with the way the CRP grazing windows are set up, it's really difficult to get both the quality and the quantity of forage to maintain good cattle performance. So that was a little disappointing for us. We worked with PFI to try to show that we could maintain bird habitat and improve the soil and still have high quality cattle forage by grazing. Well, they wouldn't let us graze outside of those windows, even for a trial. So that was difficult, but eventually we'd like to hopefully influence policy to allow grazing in June and July when the tallgrass species are at their highest quality.
Thank you for bringing that up. That was one of the things that I had on my list that I had not checked off.
Sure.
Good. Thank you.
I guess my greatest lessons is you're never doing anything totally wrong. every seeding is different and you learn something. I've learned something every time we've done this, and that's the greatest lesson is the mistakes we've made and how we can improve. And yeah, I would just love to see our whole farm in prairie. But then I thought about what would we do if we really got a prairie fire, like lightning strike, because it would just burn across the whole farm. And that is a problem. I mean, that was a problem they had when this whole place was prairie, and we do get lightning strikes. And but so having a long-term plan and implementing it over time and learning as you go and really studying it. I think you really have to have a passion for it. And as I said, you want to know that you're doing good things underground. You're building the livestock underground, as well as the flowers and butterflies that Ruth loves above ground.
And yeah, so Kevin, do you have parting words of wisdom from your experience working with landowners?
Yeah, and I've heard it tons of times. And one of my sayings that I've been saying for 2 decades down here is the 3 Ps of planting and maintaining a prairie is patience in year 1, patience in year 2, and guess what? Patience in year 3. And I always tell them I don't like to use the word ugly, but it's going to be kind of ugly in that first year, maybe even 2. But if you can go out and encourage, Allie and I get to do this all the time, and a lot of other conservation professionals, wildlife biologists get to do this on private lands. I love doing plant identification in year 1. I mean, literally going out and saying, thank you, seed dealers, for putting yellow early successional flowers in the mixes, because then we can see, and the landowner can see success. Black-eyed Susan, partridge pea, side oats is a warrior. I mean, side oats grandma is a warrior. I mean, that sucker comes up and it looks great, right? Maggie's giving me the thumbs up. Yeah. Just being patient and just really, knowing that you're doing good things, and just sticking with it. Prairies didn't form overnight, and they won't. And I always equate it back to most of it's not an annual crop. It's not corn, it's not soybeans, it's not oats, wheat, it's not our garden. It's going to be something that takes time, but it's really well worth it. So.
Yeah. So Allie, this time I saved you for last. What would you like to say to wrap it all up?
I would follow Kevin's lead a little bit and talk about patience and really looking into that seedbed prep portion. There's seedbed prep, in my opinion, can make or break what the seeding and everything else happens after that. So if you can make sure to get with somebody who knows what they're doing as to how to prepare, or even lack thereof, because disking is not hardly ever one of our recommendations. That's not our go-to recommendations, I should say, if we're talking like corn and bean type stuff anymore, because we've got some great drills that'll get through there. Because as I'm sure you've seen, Dave, that disking tends to bring up Kevin's best word, ugly stuff, when you do that. So keeping more of that soil quality along with it. But that seedbed prep, depending on what you have and what you're trying to get out of it, that can be all kind of across the range of how to best do that. And then I would throw out just a couple ideas into that, keeping the ground in native prairie after a federal program ends. I'd be curious what you guys would think about, working more towards getting some working lands, some grazing back into it, and making some money out of that, or marketing your cattle a certain way where it was grazed on natives, it was grazed on pollinator habitat even, I know that stuff it's just starting to like breach in some areas, but I think that might be the wave of the future. Or seed collection for other places, or beehives, making honey on your place. things like that. I'm inundated with programs all the time. So sometimes I like to dream outside of programs, right, wrong, or indifferent. But I'd be curious if, I agree, we need to figure out something to let you guys do. And then Kevin and Sarah, let me know if you know different, but I think there are some, most counties have kind of a tax system where if it's no longer in CRP and you're not farming, it's not used for ag, I think you can get a reduced tax rate on some of that ground. So something that it's not going to make you money, but hopefully it won't be taken as much from you. But I just love hearing from landowners, and I learn every time I talk to a landowner or farmer. So we get as much from you guys as you hopefully get from us. So this was wonderful. Thanks for having us.
Oh, I'm so glad to be able to bring you together virtually. Someday we'll sit down again together and we'll have these conversations in person. And I think when we have our Native Seed stakeholder meetings, we need to have landowners at the table, at the meeting, because I've learned a lot, and I appreciate all of the things that you've all brought into this. I was just brainstorming when Allie was talking about ways of maybe making extending the lifetime of these conservation plantings. I was thinking maybe there should be Be Better certified beef, in addition to some of these other Be Better certified products that Xerces is managing. Sarah, there's a bug in your ear. And what I'm hearing from all of you as we wrap this up is that there's not a single part of this process that is more important than others. So I'm all about the seed and where the seed's coming from and the seed mixes and all that stuff. But I'm hearing that site prep makes or breaks the planting. So no matter how good your seed is, you got to prepare that seed bed well, and that you have to it's going to look better in those first several years if you do the mowing and you follow those establishment practices. That you need to have a long-term plan and be learning from things, and that you need to monitor stuff and walk through it and observe what's happening and check that against your definition of success. So I'm just seeing all the parts of the process in everything that y'all have brought into this. So thank you. Anything else that we want to do, or shall we say have a wonderful Friday and enjoy the rest of your day, and thank you all for being with us today.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks.
Yep. Thank you from behind the scenes.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Anne, and Andy as well for working behind the scenes.
It's good to meet you. I didn't know you before.
Yeah, it was great to meet those of you who are new to me as well. So thanks. And yeah. Wow. We're getting some nice comments from folks in the chat. That's always appreciated. Hope you got some good ideas, Dave. It's great to see your little daughter out there. I bet she's grown up with that planting as well, huh?
She has. They love going out there. They always ask if they can go take the ATV through the CRP, and